All right, greetings everyone. I'm going to try not to have my voice die in the middle of this because it's been a really, really long day for me. So if you can just bear with it, I'll do my best. So today, here it is. It's finally time to talk about Raff. And I know I'm late to the party, even though I got her early. I really wanted to check out a bunch of stuff this weekend, see what I thought about her, and the overall prognosis is just very positive. I mean, this isn't a hey, good news, bad news kind of thing. I absolutely think that Raff is one of the top units in the entire game, a huge get for Dark, and basically a must-have for Dark players, as well as maybe even some other people too. And all of that is just necessarily to say that, I mean, it's just really positive. Now, as for my Raff in particular, she is still being built up. So today we just have this Raff. And today we're also going to be testing her in a dark versus ice party. Pigeon has already done dark versus light, which was the obvious one. And there were some really positive things to say there for the matchup. And I've seen matchups against multiple different PvP teams. And the overall takeaway is that she's just really strong. If we even just take a look at her right here in a full dark party, if we just take a look at mine, who's just slightly over, I think you can see some net positives towards stats as she is, and the type of stats that you can be pushing, which it feels, again, just generally really good to me. So let's get into the details really quickly. So 100 cost, limited time, dark elemental character. I know it says it's not limited here, but that's incorrect. Mace, hat, cloth, and accessories. Scholar and Spellblade for her sub-jobs. TMR is a accessory, interestingly enough, because it looks like an armor almost, but 266 HP, 10 defense, 3 agility. With the TMR skill of 2 uses, increase max HP by 25% for 3 turns, and increase jump by 1 for 3 turns. I'll come back and talk about this in a second, but it's pretty interesting that this is her ability, seeing that, you know, more HP is a net positive for her, but she also has some access to jump +1, so she's a pretty mobile tank, at least in terms of jumping, but, you know, okay, interesting enough. Master ability. Now, most noteworthy thing here is chance of being targeted by 5 is a permanent addition there with AoE resistance, so neither of that can be dispelled. Means that she doesn't really need to have access to hate generation too terribly much, since she will always have it in every single battle that she enters with. As for dream ability, I mean, more resistance and critical evasion are both 2 net positives for a tank, so that seems quite fine. As for the stats, as you can see, generally net positive against everything except piercing, but that's really not scary in a lot of cases. I mean, quite a bit of strike and magic and slash are all really, really good things to see here. Paralyze and confuse resistance, I'm less crazy about, but nothing too negative to say here across the entire board. Now, looking at skills, here's another completely refreshable source of hate. Getting her into EX will basically net her 10 every battle, which is a really good amount, while also 12% HP and 15% defense. Make no mistake, she is an anti-physical tank, but she has enough in her kit to be flexible against magic damage as well. Scholar gives her more defense and accuracy. Her other skill here from her main job gives jump +1, and agility of 12%, which I quite like, but she still has the flexibility of light resistance and magic resistance from her Spellblade, and decrease of skill activation time. Honestly, all the support skills feel valuable in different categories, removing casting time activation, which is in her kit, giving her more ammo against magic damage, higher agility to keep up with fast dark units, or, you know, just taking a look at more defense and accuracy, there's plenty of good stuff to choose here, and that's the key takeaway here. It's all good. As for her counter abilities, mainly a counter to slash damage, which is quite interesting. We've been seeing this more and more. Reducing slash damage makes her particularly good against a large portion of the meta, and I think it is overall a net good thing here. As for Scholar, Scholar allows her to counter damage, but unless you were going for a brawler type build, don't see most people using this. As for Spellblade, Spellblade will allow for a lot of extra protection against magic damage, provided, there's no reaction block, but this is good. There are at least 2 counters here, one for physical, one for magical. Are they the strongest options in the world? No, but in combination with the rest of her kit, it is quite good here. So, taking a look at her limit burst, quite simply, it's a large AoE, 69 AP, funny number, and extends the elemental chain by 1. That's the real key here. A strong hitting ability, but mainly used to extend elemental chains, if that's what you are using. 1 second, please. Just have something in my throat today. Alright, as for Spellblade, gives her access to Poison, Light Killer, Magic Resistance, and Spirit Up. Damage with chance of being targeted, so access to Generation of Hate, and Dispel all debuffs while also giving Light Killer. Now, I do think that these abilities are potentially good because she can get pretty close to her opponent, but really, if you're running this, you're looking for more hate, which honestly isn't a super big problem, but is nice to have, and it is an AoE ability, so could be useful in some cases. But the really big thing here is the magic resistance and Spirit Up for herself and allies. I think that this is good enough just to be run on its own, but we'll talk about team combinations a little bit later. As for Scholar I quite like because it gives her extra physical defense. So if you're going more against physical teams, the Scholar is almost better to run. Whereas if you're going against magical teams, Spellblade is great to run. You look at here and restoring CT and decreasing skill activation time, which benefits her main kit, but also she has the large AoE that can absorb damage, which is another access to healing. And both her her key weapon as well as one other thing, and potentially her vision card next week, will give her a stronger healing from this part too. So if she can catch multiple opponents, she still has a fair amount of offense, interestingly enough, that can deal a good amount of damage, catch a lot of enemies, and potentially restore a huge amount of HP. So overall, I mean, Scholar and Spellblade are for 2 different cases, but it's great to see such flexibility in a unit. As for her main job, what you're giving up is Inflict Doom, which just isn't good enough in most PvP settings, and particularly I don't think good enough with this unit, so fine, moving on. But Increase, also a HP restore that isn't too terribly flexible. I mean, maybe it could be good in some cases, but I question whether her AI will even ever use it. Now, as for her main job, her main basic attack does have short range, but does increase healing power for 3 turns. This can be important because her second ability, when the condition is met, she will actually, her HP falls below 50%. She gets a one-time heal. In combination with her mace and this ability, it can be a massive heal for almost 9,000 in some cases, which is enough to really, really, really reset the opponents on trying to take her out again. So yeah, also the debuff resistance here is quite nice as well, but in combination, these 2 abilities plus her mace actually give her a considerable amount of healing. Her large AoE can decrease defense, spirit, attack, and magic, so it is a full break that can be used in multiple cases, and does even have some chaining applications for not too terribly much AP, so okay. Dispel Shell and Ignore Fatal Damage to Targets is quite a nice single target attack. Since there are quite a number of characters running around with this ability, this is a great thing to be able to get rid of, including Shell for magic damage team. As for her barrier, it does get upgraded into EX to reduce damage taken by 50%, light resistance and dark resistance by 15%, which is two very important matchups. And of course, auto revive. Now, auto revive, if she does actually auto revive, her HP thing will not trigger. And this is kind of important because a massive damage from anywhere over 50% downwards will just kill her. So it's a question of how much HP, but I think HP stacking here is way more important. Now, auto revive will also give her some AoE resistance too, which is pretty nice. The AoE resistance is good for just keeping her alive. Now, as for her job level 25s, and decrease dark resistance by 25%, an enabler for anyone else on her team with 100% hit chance when it's upgraded. Honestly, there isn't too terribly much to criticize here. I think that this is one of the stronger units that we've seen come around recently, and one that seems more useful in multiple different applications for her element. Now, of course, anyone with Sephiroth, automatically, you just want this character because she's a tank. She makes a strong defensive and offensive killer even better. This synergy between these three characters is already really good, but I want to point something out. If you were to combination this character with a couple of lower cost dark elemental characters, the ones I'm specifically have been thinking of recently is like Halloween Leela is a different element. Halloween Lucia, and in combination with Garvel, the cost is only 250, really quite reasonable for some really strong characters. Also, a incredibly anti-physical unit with an incredibly anti-physical unit here, with a fair amount of magic damage synergy in combination with Garvel, who also has a 140 now to push his damage and HP capabilities up even higher. It seems like a natural fit for a really reasonably high tier character, but fairly low cost, with an entire damage type synergy going on here. So yes, Black Witch Helena is also going to get her 140 this week, so stay tuned for that. But I think that there's a lot of different units that welcome this new character. Raff works with basically anyone in the dark element, but works incredibly well, and potentially incredibly well with some very low cost, limited time and non-limited time characters. So yes, Raff is almost a slam dunk must get for anybody who is playing the dark element. But yeah, I mean, like, it'll be interesting to see what her job VC looks like the next week, and whether there's any potential shenanigans that can be done with that. But let's get in, and today we're going to be testing a little bit different, and one of the main reasons that I wanted to test this particular group is because I've already seen the dark element, and I can tell you right now, it's already very strong. It's already a very, very strong combination. But more so, I'm just interested in this because from some of the videos I watched, this was one of the types that particularly struggled against the Barris and Range combination. That was one that found a fair amount of success. So yeah, it's a little bit of a interesting idea to kind of see this matchup as opposed to some other ones. And now I'm just going to bring something over on my screen so I can just take a peek here. So the first one we're going to be running for her is we're just going to be running the HP recovery first, because this one effectively lasts for the entire time. And we'll get some initial damage looks from both dark elemental characters as well as ice elemental characters and ranged. I would say that ice matchup and range might be one of her worst. Taking a look at some of the damage that we can do just immediately to her. With a powerful top tier character, again, you can kind of see how the damage stacks up. Now, Sephiroth doesn't have his barrier, but then again, neither does she. So we'll just take a second here and also attack with an AoE. And you can see how her damage resistance stacks up. It's pretty good here to go up against this kind of power. As you can see, we're dealing a fair amount to a mage style character, but her physical does last up. Is just generally pretty strong. So we'll run a buff here for our ice elemental characters. And one thing that I do think a lot of people were curious about is what her speed actually looks like in battle for a tank. And this is basically it. It's not my favorite build of her because I think that this one has gone a little more offensive than defensive. But you can see here at a 101 speed versus someone like Sephiroth, who does have a TMR equipped with speed boost, who's up to 119, and Majin Fina, who's about 100. She does compete fairly well if TMR runes are not taken into account. So over here, and we'll get Barris to do some attacks. So much as you'd expect for a primarily physical built unit, or anti-physical unit right now, this one does hurt a little bit more. We'll run this damage just on her, just so we can get that HP restore. So as you can see, about 5,300 without her secondary buff active, so pretty darn strong, I would say. Also, she does start with initial AP, which is always a thing that we are very, very happy to see. Run that buff. Now she will also, before we do that, let's actually even throw off a limit burst against some other units to see how much damage we're doing. So you can see, not too terribly much against Barris, an insta-kill versus this unit, Alaya, and even half the HP off of Snow is particularly pretty strong. Some of her other AoEs. And this is at about 1300 magic too. You can see how much damage she is capable of doing. And yes, it could be built for a more defensive in this case, but we can see the kind of damage that she is doing. I mean, she is effectively like a anti-physical and potentially anti-magic tank, but she's still capable of doing a good amount of damage against groups that may not be prepared to deal with this kind. Single target here. And against Alaya. Yeah, so you can see the numbers that she's pushing. I'm curious about next week what her VC and the new Esper that will go with her, how defensive, how offensive it may go, and what exactly that VC looks like in terms of jobs to potentially support any interesting new teams that will go with it. All right, so next up, we want to run the barrier on her to really get her going. So let's just push that. Now, unlike some of her other abilities, this is an ability that does have some casting time, so let's just pass for a second. Our enemies aren't really doing too terribly much, and we'll get Sephiroth even to launch an attack or two. So you can see the type of damage that Sephiroth is doing against this team, and the type of damage that he would do against Raff with her barrier active. As you can see, good. I mean, it is a high amount of damage reduction that we are getting off of here. Very comparable even to how much Sephiroth has. And again, just a key point, Sephiroth does have a considerable amount of dark damage resistance on his kit. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear and cut about how strong this unit is and how good she truly is. But we will just pass a little bit further. Unfortunately, we already had to use our limit burst, but yeah, you can get an idea. Again, this one is not particularly built for anti-magic, but that barrier goes a long way to potentially saving her. I mean, I'm very excited to build my own with TMR runes. I'm thinking HP runes. Also potentially some more magic offensive runes so she can basically take quite the beating but dish out a fair amount of damage too. Let's try just a few other attacks here. and see how much we're getting there. And then we will just, so we're not interrupted. Oh, we're going to get a little interrupted, aren't we? So just to compare about the kind of damage that we can potentially do, of course, there's always a little bit of difference, but you can see how good Raff does stack up. A little bit less against magic, but I think if you just go Spellblade, you can really, and particular supports, you can really still have a really a good level into anti-magic. So skip that, and then we'll do one last test with Elia here. See just how good that damage reduction is when she's not shooting Barris in the back. I think we'll just need a better angle. It's a little awkward, this field, but yeah, you can see some of the damage pretty good. That's another possibility for her Esper and BC next week, elemental chain resistance, which is one of the things that it feels like is the new hotness right now on JP. So yeah, let's go that. We will just go into here and make sure. And let's let Raff do something. Get a little bit of animations there. Let everyone else just kind of pass. And give some spotlight to the new girl. Hey, look, it's Dialdo. Cool. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting teams. I think that this is one of the more interesting units, both in terms of how you build. These vision cards that I think are potentially really interesting in combination with this. You know, Dark Bahamut, which was a fairly defensive vision card, is really good here. Anima in combination with that on something like Sephiroth. And then just throwing basically like all the different types of dark magic boosting BCs that are out there. If you think about like Flowers Blossoming in the Night, the Fireworks one with Lorelei and Skahal on it. Both of those, like, there's just so much potential here for a lot of different powerful combinations. So to end, here she is on the home screen. I'll show off what her Limit Burst animation looks like for those of you who have stuck around. But this is definitively, I think, just a fantastic, absolutely fantastic unit. So here you go. Here's her Limit Burst in all its glorious black feather Sephiroth kind of style animation. Single target, but multi-hit. Seems to be a common theme. And you know what? To end the video, let's use our 2 tickets here. Why not? Maybe get very lucky because this will determine whether the review was good or not. Oh, it was a bad review. I guess she's trash. Anyway, tank with a lot of survivability, mainly because of barrier recovery of HP and whatnot, be able to weaken opponents' guts and shell cancellation, re-raise added to barrier buff and whatnot, and just the continuation of damage through a target's turn will be incredibly useful in raid battles. So yeah, not too terribly much to say. Potentially very close to a must-have for everybody, but we'll find out more about that as it develops. So thanks so much for watching. Take care. See you next time.